Welcome. Yes, I own a Canucks jersey, and I'm wearing it with a Bruins hat, 2011 sacrilegion, but we're ignoring that. I want to talk about Bo Horvat. Would he fit as a Boston Bruin? Let's talk about it for a bit. Jake DeBrusk currently on the LTIR, freed up a little more cap space for the Bruins. Of course, you don't want to see Jake DeBrusk on the IR, but at least the Bruins have $4 million in cap space now, which is somewhat good news. It comes at a cost, but they have $4 million of cap space. Better than they were a few months ago when they were like 800,000. Next year's cap space, with all the unrestricted free agents and free agents, is going to be between 20.7 million and 23.7 million. Obviously, the 20 point, I mean, maybe it's not that obvious because it's kind of just arbitrary numbers, but the 20.7 million is with a $1 million cap increase, salary cap increase league wide, and the 23.7 is with the $4 million cap increase. We've heard it could be as low as $1 million. We've heard it could go up to $4 million for an increase next year in the over salary cap, but we don't know. But it seems like it's going to be somewhere within that range, maybe on the higher end. We don't know yet. So both numbers are up there just because. We'll start with the unrestricted free agents for this offseason in Boston. Big name, Pastrnak. He's probably going to eat up pretty close to half of the salary cap that's available for the Bruins this offseason. Nick Foligno, probably gone. Craig Smith, probably gone. Patrice Bergeron, probably retiring. Tomas Nosek, we don't know. He currently just landed on the IR. I think he has a fractured foot. He'll be evaluated in 4 weeks. Maybe that frees up a little more cap space. I don't know. If it's a fractured foot and he's going to be evaluated in 4 weeks, he should probably be on the LTIR, long-term injured reserve. So, don't really know what's going on there, but not my place to ask questions. Nosek, good fourth liner. We'll see if he's back next season. David Krejci, likely not back next year. I'd be surprised. Connor Clifton, good defensive man. Good playing on the third line. He's having a breakout season. He's playing well. He's got a little offense to his game. He's got some physicality, leading the Bruins in hits. I like Connor Clifton a lot. Chris Wagner, who's a buried contract in the AHL, and Anton Strawman. I don't know why they signed Anton Strawman. Maybe at more depth for their D men, but he hasn't played a whole lot. Just hanging out in the AHL, making $1 million this year, so whatever. Restricted free agents, you got Trent Frederick, who's having a pretty good year. He could score 20 goals this year. It'll be close. And Jeremy Swayman, who his numbers have increased quite a bit from the beginning of the season. He's around a 917, 918 save percentage. Making a case to have a decent contract. He's putting together a couple pretty solid years. Might get a decent pay raise, more than people might expect. A lot of speculations that Swayman will get a contract that'll be around $2 million. I think his value is a lot higher, but I guess we'll find out. That's 11 players that the Bruins will lose this offseason. Should none of these get re-signed, obviously they'll have to re-sign. It's 11 players they have to re-sign, whatever. 11 RFAs, UFAs this offseason. That's a lot. To fill those positions, it's going to take a lot of cap space. Notably, you got one of the top scorers in the league. You got one of the best defensive forwards in the league, or perhaps of all time. You got David Krejci, who's consistently a 60 to 70 point player, year in, year out, provides a 200-foot game. You got Connor Clifton, who's anchoring that third line. Him and Forbert on that third line have been fantastic. It's been one of the better third lines in the league. You got a good defensive center on the fourth line. Nick Foligno, physical, gritty, plays on the second power play unit. Can make. He has a little bit of playmaking abilities, but he's really good at board play, and he's a leader. He's just a natural leader. He's a nice guy. Leads by example. It's losing some of these players is going to hurt next year, and they'll have to find a way not to replace it, but to rebound from the loss of some of these players. You got restricted free agents. You got Trent Frederick, again, close to a 20-goal pace, and Swayman, again, 7 or 917, 918 save percentage currently. Swayman's looking good. I think both are due for a raise. So there's already a concern with the cap for next year. Let's look at Bo Horvat. He's currently making $5.5 million. His contract expires at the end of this year. So you'll already have to do some finagling to get under. So to have Horvat fit under the cap, maybe you have to trade one of your players away. I don't know who you would necessarily trade, but you got to make the cap work somehow. Maybe Horvat, or maybe the cap. Vancouver retains some of the salary, and maybe the Bruins throw them like I don't know. They don't have any second round picks, so it's either going to be a first or a third, probably a third round pick to save like whatever, $1 million. But you might also send them like, I don't know, Trent Frederick or Kopanen. There are options to send their way. So it's doable. Obviously depends on what the deal and the package would look like to acquire Bo Horvat. But the big thing is for next year, you need to be able to re-sign Bo Horvat because you're giving away quite a bit just to get him. You don't want it to just be a rental player for a couple months like, say, Rick Nash was. Right? Rick Nash comes, plays awful, and is gone into oblivion. And they gave up a lot for Rick Nash. Just an example. There's other examples with the general manager of the Bruins. Luckily, that did not happen to Hampus Lindholm last year. They signed Hampus Lindholm to a long-term contract. That's the only way to make this Horvat trade work for Boston. But they also have to be realistic in what the extent his contract extension looks like. Career high in points is 61. He played a full 82 games that year in 2018-2019. 61 points is his career high. Obviously, it's the end of his... How long is this contract? 6 years. It's a 6-year contract. Finally, the last year of it, he's having a career year, breakout season. First time in his career, he's consistently over a point per game. I think, what does he have, like 49 points? 49 points in 45 games, so still not on pace to reach that 100-point mark. But he does have 31 goals, which is also a career high. He should be career highs in both of those. He's been a negative player up until last year. Last year he was a +3, and this year he's a +3. His point production in the playoffs is about par for his career. He'll score points in every 2 out of 3 games, or a point every 2 out of 3 games. So that's the thing. Are you going to pay him the $8.5 million for his career year, which he's having this year, or are you going to pay him something more realistic? Maybe like a $6.5 million. He's not terrible on defense. He can play a 200-foot game. We know that he's a centerman. The Bruins have their top 2 centermen as unrestricted free agents next year. You assume you're going to lose at least one of them, probably Bergeron to retirement. There's a good chance that Krejci goes as well. So you need some type of replacement. Are they going to overspend to replace one of those players? And if so, next year is going to look... A little. There's going to be questions next year with the roster. Because obviously, if Bergeron and Krejci go, you're not going to have a second-line center. Zacha is not going to fill the role of a second-line center. You're going to have questions, and you're not going to be able to re-sign some important pieces that you need. So I think you can make it work, but you have to be realistic about the contract structure moving forward. And you have to be confident you can sign an extension with Horvat really prior to acquiring him, because he's not going to be a cheap player to acquire. And the thing is, you also don't know how that chemistry is going to work out. It's worked out really well with Hampus Lindholm and Charlie McAvoy and the defensive core as a whole. But some players they don't mesh well with other players. They don't thrive as much as they have in other organizations. And Horvat's only been a Canuck. Honestly, probably about a second-line center. I'm a little iffy about calling him a first-line center. He's obviously played that position. He's played well, but, is he the guy? And if so, and if you're in Boston, which line do you actually put him on? Do you have him next to Marchand, or do you have him next to Pastrnak? on two separate, like Pastrnak, Marchand on two separate lines, or do you bring the Marchand Pastrnak line back together with, say, Horvat? Questions are to be answered. I don't know. I think it would work. I think it would be a pretty good fit. I don't think we would see the point production he's putting up this year for the remainder of his extension. And that's okay. He's a pretty solid and consistent player. I have questions about how much of the cap a Horvat extension would look like. He's a great player. He's a great guy. He's the captain over in Vancouver. He's got some leadership, which the Bruins will definitely need with the loss of Nosek, or not Nosek. What's his face? Bergeron, their captain, and Nick Foligno. David Krejci as well provides a lot of leadership in that locker room. They're going to need some type of replacement for that. So there's a lot of reasons to give Bo Horvat a little more money than he probably deserves, but at the same time, you have to be realistic about the cap situation in Boston. So this is forward thinking, but you have to think forward if you're going to acquire. The Bruins need to consider what they're going to do next season. And the trade deadline is not just a push for the playoffs this year. It also provides a little bit of security, long-term security, for what's going to happen next year. If Bo Horvat hits the offseason, there could be a bidding war. Somebody's going to overpay for him. And do you want to really, the cost could go up, right? You have exclusive talking rights with Bo Horvat now. If he hits free agency and the cost goes up by a few $1 million, it's really not going to be a great cap hit. He's 27. He's a center, 6 feet, 215 pounds. He's a decent-sized dude. It's kind of what you want. More of a power forward type build based on the height and weight. So we'll see. I don't know. I have a lot of questions of how this would work for next year. Don Sweeney's really not worried about next year. This is the year to go for a championship for Boston. And if so, and you bring Horvat in, how does he fit into the lineup? Is he playing on the third line? Because you have one of the best top two center combos in the entire league. Where do you place Horvat? Do you place him on the second line wing? And then you have a guy like Zacha who's playing on the third line, got a nice close to $5 million contract extension. Do you have what's going on? Do you have Zacha and Taylor Hall and Charlie Coyle playing on that third line where Zacha's the least paid player? You got Coyle making 5.25, Hall making $6 million, and Zacha $3.5 million this year, 4.75 next year. That's a really expensive third line. It's not how you want to approach things from a cap management standpoint. So, just curious, thoughts. You got thoughts? Drop them below. I think there are worse moves that the Bruins could make, like getting another defensive player because they already have 9. You got plenty of defensive depth. Your forwards are scoring. You can use a little forward depth, sure, but you got to use this opportunity to plan for next year if you're going to make a move. You can make a push. You can add some depth. You can add a player. But it also has to be conducive to your plans for next year because there are a lot of unanswered questions. The biggest one being Pastrnak, Bergeron, and Krejci, right? Your top scoring right wing, your top right wing. Yeah, right wing. Wait, because he plays left. He's on the left. I don't know what the power play position is called. He plays where Ovechkin plays on the power play. Left by the dot, up by the hash marks. I'm like, wait a minute. Nope, he's a right wing. Your top right wing, one of the best scorers in the league. You're losing your top 2 centermen. There are questions. Let me know what you guys think. Would you like to see Horvat in a Bruins uniform? Do you think they should execute this trade? Remember that this is going to come at some type of cost. You can trade a first-round pick in hopes that the first-round pick is a lower pick because you hope the Bruins progress and make it to the playoffs or whatever. And I mean, they should make the playoffs, but you hope they make a run in the playoffs. So that pick really becomes low. Canucks know that. They know the Bruins are the best team in hockey right now with the best record. Do the Canucks ask for multiple first-round picks from the Bruins? Because, I don't know, they might as well ask for a second-round pick from the Columbus Blue Jackets. And you're only talking about a pick difference, right? One spot in the draft order's difference. So do they ask for next year's first-round pick as well? What kind of goes on from there? And then it's kind of a slippery slope. You're giving around first-round picks for a guy you don't have an extension worked out, or you might end up overpaying for. Let me know what you think. I just wanted to see how the money would work. I have a lot of questions. It really depends on what Horvat's contract looks like. I think he'll get signed for around $7.5 million for a contract extension. My personal thoughts is it still might be a little much. I think you can sign him realistically around a 6.25, maybe a $6.5 million extension, kind of similar to Hampus Lindholm's. But it's the nature of the NHL. Some team is more likely than not to overpay for a guy having a career year nowadays. Teams are more apt to spend money on a player's future potential rather than now, and that normally applies with younger players, but at the same time, you know, we're seeing that with guys like, say, Nazem Kadri, who had a career year, got a nice contract to be a second-line center. One of the best second-line centers in the league. I'm not saying that's a terrible contract or anything. I'm just, you know, there are GMs that are willing to pay a premium to have a top two centerman on their team. So we'll see. All right, guys, that wraps this up. Let me know what you think. You're a Bruins fan, you're a Canucks fan. Let me know how you feel. No fighting. You know, Canucks are going through a hard time right now. Bruins are due in the next few years to go through a hard time. Can't hate each other right now. 2011's over, man. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care, all right?